Well, you done found us again. You messed up because I'm gonna tell you here on Small Biz, Big Ideas. I told you we only bring you the best. First of all, we've got the best hair in small business with Charlie Derador. Look at that hair; it's just perfect. I don't even know. Mm. And now we bring you. I told you we only bring you the best of the best of the best as it relates to guests, especially ones with super long locks. We've got we've got a man that will tell you, will swear up and down that everybody is in sales. He's my good
Everyone's in
friend,
sales.
Todd Cohen. Todd, thank you very much for joining us.
Jim,
Todd, we're gonna have
Charlie,
fun, man. We're gonna have
I
fun tonight.
I appreciate the invite. I've been looking forward to this for like, I don't know, the last 10 minutes or so. I mean, this is
Oh,
this is this is
My kind of
great.
guy, right there. Here it is. Okay, here
oh,
we go.
right. And we're off, right?
And we're off.
So, Todd,
Yes.
you have got a great story. You have got to tell us how you became the keynote impresario about everything sales.
Yeah, so I got fired. I mean, that's the short version. The long version is I was working for so in 2004, 5, 6, 7, I was working for a company called LexisNexis, which as a lawyer, Jimmy, you know who they are,
I do.
and big, Charlie, you may know who they are as well. So,
Sure.
big legal database company. At the time, really big. I have no idea what they're like today. And can I have a drum roll, please? I was a senior global vice president of sales, or some title that basically made me a legend in my own mind. And then, but beyond that, absolutely, um, you know, nothing. Anyhow, so I left one day this company because they said something that hurt my feelings, which is you're fired. In any event, actually, no, they didn't. They didn't say that. They had seven of me. They were trimming it down to three of me, three positions. And they gave me the opportunity to interview for it, which I did and didn't get the position. Anyhow, I
Do you know
left.
what we call that in Virginia? If you know anything about Virginia politics, that's being
Learning.
called wildered.
Yeah, yeah. Well, back in
When Doug
Philly,
came in, he let everybody interview for their job.
yeah. Well, it's funny because I lived for almost 40, oh, actually, just about 40 years in Philly. And we had that expression, but it meant something very different. Different conversation over a different bottle of scotch. So, in any event, so I left and I took a severance and I moved on and I started doing some consulting work for today somebody I'm still very good friends with, one of the best leaders I've ever worked with, a guy by the name of Andy, and he ran about $1 billion aerospace and engineering staffing company. And I worked with him for about a year on a consulting agreement. And this was right around the time that the Bush recession really kind of took off, right? We all remember that time in
The world
2008.
burned.
Yeah, 2008, we went to bed one night, everything was fine, woke up and all the banks were gone, everything was gone, literally blah blah blah. We all remember. And so I worked for him for a while doing, I guess, traditional sales consulting because I thought I was just going to find another job. There were no jobs at one
I'm
point.
sorry to interrupt you,
Yeah,
but I'm going to.
no, please.
Could you please define traditional sales consulting?
Yeah, so he brought me in to do what a senior sales leader would do, like triage his sales organization, tell him what was wrong, what was working, what he didn't know, what he did know, validate what he did know, put together training programs, understand, travel with the reps, understand kind of were they really successful. So my career up until that point had been as either an individual contributor in organizations or leading sales teams, sales operations, that sort of thing. So he didn't really know how good his salespeople were or were not, and really what was going on out there, because his previous senior VP of sales he had to fire. Anyhow, So I stepped in to sort of triage, as I called it, for him. And
Thank you.
yeah, no, my pleasure. And that lasted for a year. And then I walked into his office and I said, "Hey, what is it? My contract is almost up. I'd like to keep going." And he said, "Well, Todd, you've helped us build a sales culture." And I thought that's really interesting. I hadn't really put those two words together. And Jim, to your question, how did I get started? Though that day in his office, when I asked Andy, "What is it you think that I do?" which is what good salespeople do. We're willing to be vulnerable, and we're all in sales, willing to be vulnerable enough to ask people questions to really understand where we stand with people, right? Rather than being in limbo. He gave me those two words, which started this whole thing, and I just ran with it. I just started writing on it and building a website around it and thinking about it. And I've always been a believer from my days at Xerox back in the dark ages that everybody in an organization has influence on the customer. It's not just the sales team. And it really crystallized from that point going forward. And 18 years later, 5 books, I don't know, 80 gigs a year, I suppose. I'm still flapping my gums and preaching the everyone's in sales passion that I still carry with me.
What makes a good salesperson?
Passion, having some confidence, a willing to fall on your face, a willing to learn, self-awareness, good
Time
emotional.
out, time
Yeah,
out, time out. Passion, not passion.
passion.
Passion for the customer, for the product, or for themselves.
I think passion for helping people make a good choice for themselves, right? Obviously, you have to love your product. If you don't like your product, it comes through in every conversation. So, I have been in positions in my career where I looked at the product and I said, yeah, no. And it was very hard to show up authentically, right? And have passion. And there have been times when I just loved what I or my team were selling, and it just came out in every single conversation. And I once had a guy say to me, "You could sell snow to a snowman," which in retrospect probably was not a compliment. However, he couched it by saying, "You're so passionate about it, I'm listening." So what makes a good salesperson? Believing in your product, believing that you have earned the right to be in the room. So not having imposter syndrome, right? You've earned the right to be in the room to talk to somebody about what it is that you're selling, what it is that you're trying to do, and being okay with hearing no. It's not rejection. It's no, it's not now. It's maybe another time. And so I think a good salesperson, obviously has a lot of confidence, and, confidence comes in time. And confidence also happens when you realize that if you don't close something, it's not personal. It shouldn't impact your confidence. It's not, "Hey, we don't like you, so get out." It's not a connection point. It's 1,000 reasons why deals don't close. Rarely is it, "Well, I'm not buying this because I don't like you." I'm sure it's happened. I know it's happened. I just don't think that's the reason in most cases. So, Charlie, candidly, we could do 5 podcasts just on that one. But if you love what you do and you love your product and you like engaging human beings, you can be a great salesperson.
I'm a small business person. My name is Bob. And right now I am launching Bob's Plumbing, Heating and Air. And I really, I train, I carry a sub unit to train, something a little cheaper, so that some customers who can't afford a train can afford a lesser unit that'll carry a 5-year warranty. Got 2 guys who are working for me, and I've got my wife doing the books and answering the phones. Um, Man, how do I go out there and sell, Todd? Like, how do I do it? I mean,
Yep.
it's frustrating to me because, yeah, I've been doing these jobs on the weekend and they're going great. And I'm leaving my big, corporate plumbing job where I just go out and do the job and then bill the customer, but really send the bill through the the corporation, and the corporation bills a customer. How do I sell what I'm doing?
Yeah, so this is exactly one of the core questions I answer, and whether it's a small and I've worked with big HVAC companies and little HVAC companies. And, at the end of the day, it comes down to this. You have to separate selling from the sales stereotype. So, when somebody says, "Hey, I'm starting my business and, I hate to sell, how do I get going?" My first response is stop thinking of it as you have to go out and push and sell, because that's the stereotype, the negative stereotype people carry with them about sales. And that, frankly, is a career killer. It's a business killer. It's a killer of confidence, right? So what you have to remember is that, which is what I teach, is every conversation is a selling moment. So it could be, "Good morning, how are you?" as you're walking into Starbucks, and might get into a conversation with somebody no different than any other conversation you would ever get into. Stop putting the label on it. "Oh, but I'm not trying to sell you," or "I don't want to feel salesy." You see, that's the head trash, right? That's the game that people play with themselves, and they hide behind that stereotype. So if I'm Bob, that small person, first thing I'm going to do is recognize that every time I'm in the community, every conversation I have, if you've developed any kind of a rapport, you've earned the right to say to somebody, "Hey, listen, before I let you go, I'm starting a business, HVAC. Would love to send you some information, or can I give you some cards?" And I'm thinking very rudimentary, because that sort of sales cycle is going to be a little more tactical, a little more tactical, if you will, as opposed to longer term.
And I expected you almost to say tactile.
Yeah, yeah,
Right. I
absolutely.
mean, it's
Yeah,
not only tactical, it's tactile, because
100%.
it's you're in line at Starbucks with John, who you've known for a couple of years, and you say, "Listen, before I let you go,
Yeah.
you know," and you don't
Or
say, "I'm sorry."
no. Well, so the thing I teach people is there's something I call the sales apologist. And I wrote my second book, and it's called Stop Apologizing and Start Selling. And the theme of the book is very simple. Selling is not something you should feel bad about doing. If you're confusing selling with "I don't want to be salesy," like that used car salesman, I get it. And you have to believe in your heart that if you love what you're doing and you're passionate about it, and you believe in, "I'm going to have a conversation with this homeowner, and I'm going to listen to what they need and ask them about their budget, and I'm going to make the right recommendation." That's no different than any other conversation you would have. So don't ever use the words, "Hey, I'm just the," or you start a conversation with an apology. "Hey, I don't want to bother you, but," or "Listen, I don't want to feel sales." I did a video on this yesterday, and I said, don't ever say to anybody, "Hey, I'm not trying to sell you anything," because you are. That's okay. I mean, that's how the world goes around. We sell each other stuff all the time, every day. So you have to get what I call that sales apologist out of your head, and start owning the fact that you have a living to make. People understand it, and don't hide behind the fact that "I want to sell you an HVAC unit," or whatever it might be. And that's okay. Build the relationship, be approachable, be in your community, be visible, be somebody people feel like they can walk up to and shoot the breeze with, and you will sell. I guarantee it. Don't let that stereotype get inside your head.
What do you say to the person who started their, and Jim, I'm sorry, but I'm on a roll. Um, what do you say to that person who is really good? And we've used this uh, analogy, actually this example before, on this podcast, baking cakes, right? Jeannie's really good at baking cakes. I'll tell you where I get it from. You've probably read the book, The E-Myth. It was printed in '93, and millions of copies still in print. And that's what really got me started in how do I tailor my development company into more small businesses than corporate leases? And how do I help people do that?
Mhm.
Be that as it may, Jenny's really good at baking cakes. Jenny's hired somebody to do the books. Jenny's hired somebody to help her bake the cakes. Jenny doesn't have time to sell the cakes. So when is it okay to say, I'm not going to sell and hire someone to go out and sell the product for you if you
So
are 0 to 6 months, 0 to 2 years out?
yeah. So I have two answers to I have several answers to that. One,
No.
no, right? What a shock. It's important to remember that sales is both a mindset, which is what I talk about, and sales is also a job function. Sometimes they're the same, sometimes they're not, right? So in terms of Janie, first of all, the thing she can't say is I don't have time to go out and sell cakes. I understand as a function, she may not have time to go quote unquote, from restaurant to restaurant pitching her cakes. Got it. At what point do you hire somebody? At what point can you afford somebody, right? I mean, at what point can you put together a compensation plan that makes sense? What does that person look like? Or maybe, I remember years ago when all these cupcake places were popping up everywhere. Now, none of them,
Mhm.
now they're all gone, right? And I had a conversation with a place back in Philly. And I said, "How do you sell?" And she said, "I don't have to sell. They just come to me." Right? Well, if you build it, they will come is not a business strategy, right? It was a great movie, but it's not a business strategy. So that being said, it's up to Janie to decide, you know what? I got critical mass. I have a line of credit. Maybe I've got a backer, whatever it might be. I can hire somebody, to go out and figuratively speaking, knock on doors, right? Maybe Janie now says, you know what, I'm going to go partner with Cisco or one of the big, I'm using them as an example, right?
Mhm.
Maybe I'm going to go partner with somebody and have them rep my cakes, right? Whatever. It really is, it's going to be a different answer for everybody. And anybody who says guaranteed at 6 months, at 12 months, at 18 months, you'll be able to do these things, I don't think understands small business planning because as a small business person, we are impacted way more by things than big businesses. I don't think that's a secret to anybody.
No.
Obviously, interest rates go up a point. General Motors, yeah, I get it. Of course, they're impacted. For me, that I feel that way more, right? So I don't know what Janie's plan is. I don't know what Janie's business plan is. I will say this. She needs a good advisor. She needs somebody who can say, a small business accountant can do a great job and say, you know what, Janie, you got critical mass. You're doing 30,000 a month. Let's hire somebody on an hourly basis to go visit all the restaurants, build target lists, blah, blah, blah. There is no answer. That's absolute. It's how your business goes. And by the way,
Right.
Janie can never say, I'm not in sales. You never know who she's going to bump into.
Right. By the way, and then I'll back out, Jim, and you can have it. I just looked it up. That's why I put my glasses on. Have you all heard of this place, Nothing Bunt Cakes?
Mhm.
Yes. Yes.
So one came to Richmond. I thought to myself, come on, really? I just looked it up. There are 800 units across the United States.
Yeah. Yeah. I do a lot of work with franchises.
What?
Yeah. I know. It's crazy. And what's so crazy about that is, some a lot of this, well, I don't want to say a lot of it. There is some luck involved as well, right? Catching a wave is really nice, right? I mean, there was a cupcake wave. I mean, there just are waves in businesses. Please understand, I'm not taking away from anything these people have done to grow the business. Not a shred of it. It is how, and not but, and there is some element of timing as well. For
Right
me,
place, right time is a
right,
lot of
for me,
business.
Yeah.
I mean, I've started my business in the depths of a recession, a training, well, we'll call it a training business at the time. Nobody was buying training in 2008. Everybody's just trying to keep their doors open. And it was about finding you don't need a lot. So you don't need to be, you don't need everybody, you just need to find one or two that you can grow organically and ask them to refer you to other people. You have to build what's called that virtual sales team. That's how Janie sells cakes. That's how Bob HVAC does it. He has the courage to say, you happy with your whatever? I need five. Give me five names, and I tell you what, as a happy customer, I'll go out of my way and do it. The failure to ask is what is where the problem is. I don't want to feel salesy. Bullshit. Feel salesy. Ask.
So,
Jim, sorry.
no, no, you're good. So, Todd, you've got your own business that you run. Like,
Yeah.
you started in 2008. Literally, the economic world is spinning out of control. Um, kind of, what were some of the biggest things you learned from 2008 to now about running your small
Oh,
business?
be
Wow.
ca- yeah. Be careful who you listen to and give money to. I've wasted a lot of money on people with big promises who underdelivered dramatically. I hired some business coaches that were terrible. I hired one guy that, I got suckered in. It's funny, we were talking about before this started, buying things and thinking we've got it nailed, and we still get so do better due diligence on the people you're hiring to be in your business. Make sure that their mindset is the same as yours. That is huge. I mean, I just can't go slow. Get a good accountant. Get somebody who can really help you think through. And I didn't do this. Help you think through all angles of your cash flow and where your money's coming from and how to preserve it and how to make sure that you're keeping enough around for the rainy day, as it were. I was lucky. I mean, I had a 3-year consulting gig that paid me extremely well while I was building this business from this conversation I had with Andy. So, uh, you know, but I've wasted the amount of money I've wasted over the years and people who overpromised and underdelivered because I didn't do my due diligence. That's the
What have
number.
you learned from what have you learned from that about reading people then?
Well, I've always been pretty good at reading people. What I've learned is to not let oh my God, this is so exciting, and my emotions override what my brain is telling me. And I see people doing that a lot. I would get real excited by something, and that red light was flashing, and somewhere inside my cranium going, hold on, ask some more questions because we're emotional buyers. And somebody had a great idea, and boom, or I would go to a trade show of other professional speakers, and I'd see all these great software systems, and I wouldn't ask enough questions, right? I would make snap decisions. So due diligence is just for me was a massive hole that I needed to fill.
What did you get right?
Yeah.
Well, early on, I had a good accountant. Candidly, I do. I hired an IP. When I say hired, by the way, I'm a company of one, so I am the ultimate small business. And I believe everybody essentially is a company of one because if your whole company, if everybody quits on you and you still want your company, it's still on your shoulders, right? So at the end of the day, we're all, even if you're working for a company, you're still a company of one. I tell that to new partners in accounting firms all the time. Your book is your business. You just happen to be wrapped around, a logo and a brand and a label. Um, I would the other some other things I got right were I immediately, as I said, got in touch with an IP attorney because I knew in my business, uh, intellectual property is everything. I've got 5 books here. I don't know how many billions of lines of text over the last not billions, obviously not really, but tens of thousands, whatever, of words. So I got a good IP attorney right off the bat, immediately. Good web designer. My first website was killer. I'm still like, whoa. So, the other thing I got right, which I found a lot of small business people don't do, I trusted my instinct on where to put money. So, in other words, somebody would write me a check for $10,000, 3,500 went into my tax account to cover my estimated taxes. I just, I can't tell you the number of times I've talked to other solopreneurs or small business people who are paying their estimated taxes on their credit card, or, don't have the money, or are going to their family to borrow it. And I'm like, I had nobody to go to. It was me, like 100% me. So I made sure religiously money was put away for estimated taxes, property taxes on my home, things that I knew that I had to make sure were in the bank, because I don't mess with that stuff. Like, I don't mess with not paying my taxes. It's just not, I don't need that aggravation. So I got that right as well. So I never had a problem. I still don't to this day.
One of the things I learned when I was still in government about, because when I first started working with small businesses, was it amazed me that you have, businesses that are in a niche business of some sort, right? And they're making great money. In fact, they're making amazing money. But somewhere along the line, they got caught up in a cycle and they can't get out of that cycle, right?
Mm.
Um, you know, uh, the borrowing cycle,
Mm-hmm.
the, you expanded too quick. You went out, you borrowed some money, and you can never get ahead of that, right? However, you borrowed it. And in
Yep.
fact, who you chose to borrow from was a bad decision. The borrowing in and of itself wasn't a bad idea, but, you know, oh, I can get it in 2 days if I go with that shady looking character, or I could wait 3 weeks and get it from a bank. Oh, he's not that shady. And you know what? I'm gonna flip back the payment pretty quick anyway, and
Yep.
they get the
I,
meat
I,
hooks in you.
I used my home equity loan, my HELOC loan to just, and it wasn't a big loan. I didn't need a lot, just to smooth things out from here, there, and wherever. And there were some lean times, believe me. There were some really lean times, and what did I get right? I went when I went into everything. Not I never left the conversation empty-handed. This is one of the things I teach. If I'm talking to somebody and they're showing interest, I never said, "Hey, here's my card. Keep me in mind," because just because you've had a 5-minute conversation, I'm not going to forget you until I find a way to hire you, and nothing further. And that's the mistake the vast majority of people make. I never said, "Hey, keep me in mind." What I said was, "I've enjoyed the conversation. Let's get together. Let's do this next week, next month." And I never stopped networking. I got to tell you, every single day I had a breakfast, a lunch, or a dinner. In fact, it was a joke. There was in Philly, there was 4 diners depending on the quadrant of the city you were in. You could go to any one of those diners at any given morning, and you would see the networking meetings happening, right? It was like it was actually funny. We used to joke about it. I never stopped networking, and I never left a meeting without something scheduled. I never left a conversation, if it was it was a conversation I wanted to follow up on, without knowing the next step. And
So,
that propelled me
so in
forward.
essence, ABC.
Well, yeah, but I don't want to reduce it just to
And
that.
I'm not.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. I'm not. Look, I'm 62 years old. I've been doing real estate since I was 22 years old. Really. So, I mean, I'm not the myopic guy who's going, oh, wait a minute, this is my opportunity to quote a great movie. What I'm saying is,
Mm,
because you and I can already tell, sort of speak the same language. If I walk into a Starbucks, if I walk into a local diner and sit down and get eggs, I'm going to start a conversation. Not because I'm trying to sell something, not
Exactly.
because I might try to sell something.
Because
It's
of who you
just,
are.
it's in me,
It's who you are.
right?
I'm the same way.
But always be closing is really what you're preaching, and in not a trite way.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I'm 64, so I got 2 on you, and I will say that you and I we're saying the same thing without a doubt, because I don't do it with an ulterior motive. I do it because
Right.
I do it because, well, let me say this. People have said you have to be an extrovert to do this, and I say absolutely not. Right? Some of the greatest salespeople I've ever met are introverts. It just we could talk about that as well. That being said, if I've just done a keynote in front of 1,000 people and I'm tired, I'm really not feeling extra. I just want to go back to my room, put my feet up, right? Or if I've done a 2-day leadership workshop or a 2-day whatever, a 1 day, then if I'm sitting down at dinner, I really don't want to talk to anybody, and I'm okay with that, right? So that's the thing I think people need to feel good about. It's like you don't have to be on all the time to be a good salesperson. When you're on, you're on, and when you're not, it's okay. That's okay. So it's funny you mentioned ABC because I was literally watching that movie yesterday, Glengarry Glen Ross. And you're absolutely right. To a certain extent, if it's a good connection, then I want to continue that conversation, and I'm going to ask to do, and I'm going to ask to do so.
But not, and you use a very good term, not for some ulterior motive,
Right.
right? I just want to get to know the person better,
Right. And
right?
you never know who knows who. Look, I in 2008, our lifeblood was networking. I joined networking groups. I went out Saturday mornings and led conversations on how to help people sell themselves. As I said, there was never a week I didn't have at least 4 or 5, a breakfast, a lunch, a coffee, a dinner. It was the other kind of blind dating, right? I mean, you just did it, and we were all doing it. And you know what? I built a hell of a network in Philly and around over, and it built my business. So
When I think about sales and I think about what you're talking about, because I think about it a lot. I didn't know that Jim was going to bring a sales expert, and I know that's a bad word in your world, but a sales guru is an even worse word, a sales leader into this mix. But I'm glad he did, because I think the listeners and the watchers of this podcast need to understand something. No is not a bad word.
it's a great word.
No is a word that can lead to self, not determination, but self. You discover self discovery, right? Jim, I'm not interested. Okay. How do you then pivot off of that and say, Bob's not interested, but I don't feel bad about myself? That's going to hurt that person opening up a new business. And I'll tell you where I learned about not hearing no the wrong way, or hearing no the right way. In the medical field, and I'm married to a physician, in the medical field, a surgeon will often say, sure, go get a second opinion in Miami. Go get a second opinion in Washington. Go get a third opinion. But understand something. I did 1,000 of these cases the past 10 years. Please go find out if you have better experiences when speaking with this other physician or this surgeon. But that I've done 10,000 of these cases, or I've done 1,000 of these cases in the past 10 years, is going to make that person think. Because I've talked to not people in my wife's world, pediatric neurosurgery, but people who are getting their knees replaced, their shoulders worked on, people in our age bracket who say, I wish I'd gone to that person I met with first, because that person told me they'd done 2,000 cases in the past 10 years. And I went with the young person who just come off the line. What I'm saying is, don't hear no. And if you hear no, don't feel bad about hearing no. Pivot off of it. Please speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, so a couple of things. One, your surgeon analogy is very personal to me. I'm a cancer survivor, and 10 years ago, when I needed to have surgery, I interviewed three surgeons. And it's funny because the first two talked all about themselves, and it wasn't about their skill. What's interesting is the only reason I was talking to them was because we had already climbed the mountain of their skill. I knew everything about them before I ever walked in. It was about a connection point, right? So any one of those three surgeons, and the one I chose at one point, he said, I 100%, and he was the third guy, and he said, I 100% welcome you to go visit, learn as much as you want. And then he paused because here's where people get screwed up. They say, but that raises the defenses. You have to say and or say nothing. Less is more. So he said, and then he paused. And then he said, look, we do about 20% of the cases on the East Coast. That's all he had to say. What sold me on him was not that. It was the connection that he created with me. It wasn't about his skill. I wouldn't be sitting there talking to him if his skill wasn't already well known to me. He didn't need to sell me on his skill, is my point. So I just have to add that in there. Since you brought up surgeons, I have a very, I tell this story in my,
You have personal experience.
Yeah,
It's very deep.
I tell this story. So when somebody hears no, and I heard no today to a fairly sizable proposal, my response was, thank you for considering me. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm here if you need me. Have a great summer. Why? Because it's not personal. You win some, you lose some. And it's no different than any other facet of life, which is why I talk about, I don't do sales training. I do sales mindset. Everything we do is a selling moment. It's a big difference. And if we acknowledge that, I teach something called the 20-60-20 rule. 20% will say yes, 60% you have to work on. It will go one way or the other. 20%, no matter what you do, will be a no. So this gentleman who said no to my proposal today, it wasn't personal. It wasn't a rejection. It wasn't, I don't like you. It was, we're not doing anything after all is said and done. Great. Thanks for considering me. The real key here is to make sure you have a big pipeline. If you want to talk an actual brass tacks, if that was the only thing I was working on, then I'd be like, holy crumb, like, I better get busy. But I don't make that mistake. And I never have, because that's what they teach you in sales training. I would say that to any small business person. Don't put your eggs in one basket. Never assume that a relationship is for life. Relationship. Okay.
Yeah.
Relationships are good until, drum roll please, they're not. And the biggest thing impacting relationships that is impacting small businesses in particular is the transition we're seeing going on right now, or that will always go on when one generation passes the business down to the next, or they sell to PE, or they sell or combine or whatever. And whoever was selling to that company makes the mistake and they go, oh, our relationship is set. Newsflash. It's up for grabs. As soon as mom and dad retire and they pass it along to the kids, every relationship has now hit the reset button. So
right, it changes. Yeah.
So there's got to be there's a lack of hubris that's required to do this, to be a small business person.
But isn't there also a necessary hubris to do this?
100%. To be a small business person, look, to be any business person, I know this is about small business, but I don't know small or big, it makes much difference. But small is more personal, right? I mean, it's, The project manager at building number 92 of General Motors probably doesn't feel it the same way that Janie's Cakes does, right? I'm not knocking project manager. I'm not knocking Janie's Cakes. I'm just making it. So since we're talking about small business, everything feels stronger. Everything feels more personal. It's harder sometimes not to take things personally. Somebody walks into Janie's store and says, let me use a different example. Somebody says to Bob, the HVAC guy, listen, thanks for your pitch. I'm going with these guys down the street. They were cheaper. My response to Bob is, it's not personal. They didn't go with you because they don't like you. They made a cost decision. Not everybody will. Some will. You have to turn that conversation to the minute you compete on cost, you lose. You're either going to win it or you're going to lose it, and it's gone, especially in HVAC. It's gone for the next 10 or 15 years. People aren't changing air conditioner condensers every year, right?
Right.
So you have to make it about. I just did a video series on this. We have to talk about value. We have to talk about the relationship. It's like Don Draper and Mad Men said. Someone says no to you. You don't like what's being said. Change the conversation before you get to the no. Make sure you're talking about what's important to them, your customer, not what's important to you.
But doesn't that demand active listening?
You took the words right out of my mouth. It means a switch in mindset, right? Sales is a mindset. Sales is a belief that if you show up and you're a good listener, you'll sell. If you show up and you're authentic and you're passionate and you care and you ask good questions, active listener, now you've differentiated yourself from the competition. It no longer becomes about price. It becomes about, this guy gets me. You know what? I like him. I'm going to buy from him.
Whether he's a surgeon, an HVAC guy, or a plumber, or whether she bakes cakes.
It's all the same.
Right.
If I connect with you, it's not about price. If I connect with you, listen, I go to Starbucks every morning at 5 a.m. Not for me, but for my wife. Not because I'm getting her just a cup of black coffee. It's got to be fancy schmancy, whatever. Not really. It's just with a shot and blah, blah, blah. Do you think I can get that cheaper somewhere else? Yeah, it's $9 every morning. Guess what? I walk in. They say, good morning, Todd. They say, you and Karen.
Right.
So it's not about the $9. It's about how I feel.
Okay. Can I take this over the line just a little bit? Guys, do you mind? I have been the landlord to 5 Starbucks over the time span that I've been in business. And I have always made the argument that each Starbucks, excepting for the licensees that are in the Walmart, not the Walmarts, the Kmart. Wow, Kmart, not Kmart. Target, except for those stores, the ones that are in the airports, the corporate leased Starbucks that are on the street. Each and every one of them is a small business unto itself.
Of course it is.
They have a manager. The manager sets the tone. The assistant manager does what that manager asks of her or him. And therefore, the associates or the baristas, everybody else, they know that Todd gets this thing for his wife every morning. And guess what? Somebody is behind you 2 mornings out of 10 and knows what you're going to get. And that's a conversation that gets started because a small business opened in your neighborhood. I never understood, and I'm not out here defending corporate coffee, but I never understood this notion of Starbucks is bad for the coffee business. Starbucks launched 100,000 small coffee shops in America.
Yeah, I don't understand. I've heard that 1,000 times and never understood it. What do they call it? Something rises all ships, low tide rises all, whatever.
Rising tide lifts all ships.
That's it. Yeah. Something I knew it was some some naval metaphor. Starbucks did the coffee business the biggest favor on the planet, we could argue.
Right. Right.
So,
Anyway, that's going far afield. I
but
apologize. But
Well,
but
but you
but
know what
but
it is? I think it proves the point that everything is an opportunity, right?
right.
There was a woman who worked for me. Jackie, if you're listening, Jackie, I need to see you. It's just been too long. But Jackie used to say to me all the time, like something bad would happen and I would get angry because, I may have a little bit of a temper. And she looks at me and she say, "Oh, that's a platinum opportunity. That's a platinum
Oh,
opportunity." Right? And the first time she said it to me, I was like, I'm in my feelings. I can't hear what you're saying. But over time, when that would happen, I got what she was saying, which is, listen, you're angry right now, but in this moment, there somewhere in all of that, there's an opportunity even bigger than this moment to flip out of this and move on and take it somewhere
of
else,
course. Of
right?
course.
And so everything always has to be an opportunity. So even in the lowest moment, even in 2008, you're sitting there, you're without a job, and like because you opened your eyes and opened your ears,
And
you
was
saw
vulnerable.
that there was an opportunity to be had. And that's the one thing I will go to my grave appreciating about my father, in that in a world in which people did not see opportunity, he didn't just see opportunity, he plotted around and conspiracized
Yeah.
around opportunity. And he waited and plotted and waited and was patient and was disciplined about it. And then he sprung his trap and was able to do what he did with his business. And it's hard in the moment that sometimes you don't even know you're in a moment about what that opportunity can be, but your eyes always have to be open and your ears always have to be open to it.
Well, that's exactly right. You can't fall asleep with a switch, as I said a moment ago, or said what I said a moment ago was if you build it, they will come is not business strategy, right?
no,
Unless even unless you're a funeral home, and even then, they're struggling, and or the IRS, right? Death, the whole death and taxes thing. Let me come back though, if I could, to your example of Bob's six-person HVAC company. Though ultimately, the way that company is really going to grow is not by taking somebody out of their natural habitat and forcing them to go out and knock on doors, metaphorically, of course, and sell. They have to understand that every time a technician, every conversation is a sales moment. Everyone's in sales. So let me explain what that means, right? Somebody calls in and they have a question about their bill. The question will get answered, but how they feel about how Bob's wife handled it will drive the next interaction, whether it happens or not, right? It will drive whether they make that referral or not. So Bob's wife going into it going, wow, I know I can answer the question, but I have to remember that this is also sales, meaning they're going to listen to me and they're going to make a gut level feeling about, hey, that was a good interaction. I feel good about these people. I'm going to call them again, or I'm going to sign a contract with them, or blah, blah, blah. The technicians, when they go out and do PMs and they see something wrong, they have to have the courage to say, listen, I did your PM, you need Freon, right? And then the technician, as I often say, they go, I'll have somebody call you to talk to you about that. Wrong. You've just walked away from the opportunity. The homeowner is listening to you. He trusts you. He's like saying, tell me, don't abdicate the moment. In other words, the technician at that point
is a salesperson.
is the chief sales officer of the company at that
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah.
And we have to break through the mindset that because they're going to say, hey, I'm not trying to sell you anything, not in the stereotypical way. By doing what you do and making a recommendation, I will listen to you and I will say yes. And now that technician has helped the growth of the company, and Bob didn't have to make an additional sales call. That's a sales culture. I could take people, look, I work with accounting firms, for example. You think accountants went to school to become salespeople? Hell no, right?
No.
But I teach them how to sell by having a sales mindset. and a belief that sales is influencing and motivating and coaching and all the things, all those metaphors. I mean, excuse me, synonyms. So that's how that's how any small business grows. Don't spend a lot of money on sales training when you hate the idea of sales because of the stereotype. Invest in belief that everything you do is a sales moment. Every connection point is an opportunity to build a relationship. That's how it goes.
As we get ready to wrap up, Todd, tell the good listeners where they can find you on the interwebs and the vibes out in the world.
What did they call it on the office? The worldwide interweb. Um, my website is toddcohen.com, TODDCOHEN.com. Anything and everything you ever wanted to learn about sales culture is there. Jim, you froze there a little bit, buddy.
It's the story of my
You're
life.
You've been frozen. You've been frozen for about 25 seconds now.
Yeah, well, we can make all kinds of cracks about that. And certainly, my email is Todd, Todd, at toddcohen.com. And you can find my books on Amazon. You can get them from me. You can not get them at all because I'm not trying to sell you anything. And I couldn't resist. And and
But
and and
I will never use the word "but" again in
yeah,
another.
don't ever use it.
No,
Don't ever.
that's the one thing I took from this is don't use that word.
Just one thing, really, Charlie? Just one thing?
Well, I mean, the most important thing I took away from it, though.
Yeah.
But think about what you just said, right? This whole thing has been an hour and change, and I got a nugget. I got a nugget. I'm going to carry.
Well, good. It's Jim, it's like you and I've talked. Well, listen, I'm glad. I mean, everyone's in sales, and the minute you divorce yourself from that icky stereotype of the, is the minute you start connecting in a way that's meaningful, and
right.
and you've earned the right to ask people. And if someone says no, it ain't personal.
No, it's not at all.
It's just move on. They're in that bottom 20. Just move on, man. Just fill your pipeline. Go out and network and meet lots of people. Be fearless about asking. Love what you do. You will have to buy one of those little cash machines. No, I don't have one, by the way.
You're right, because you take credit card.
I hate taking credit cards. Oh, there's a small business issue, taking credit cards. I mean, when I sell a keynote or a workshop, I mean, it's 5 figures usually. I don't want to take a credit card on that. That's a hit to me. So it's just as a small note. I'll take a credit card if somebody, like I did something for ExxonMobil in Houston. Great client, had a great time, did a 2-hour keynote and quasi workshop. They paid me on their credit card. I was like, no problem, because you know what? It's ExxonMobil. It's a wonderful new opportunity. It's a great logo. Looks good on my website, and I buy their gas.
Right.
And I buy their
and
gas.
if you say no to them about that, they're not calling back.
Well, it's funny. It depends on the relationship. Because at one point I did say, hey, I need to add a little upcharge. And they were like, fine.
Yeah. They understand. They understand the 3.5 points. Sure.
I want to say they didn't care, but they're not tripping over dollars to pick up dimes. You know what I mean?
Right.
They got the bigger picture in mind. Todd, come down and show us something new. That's what they're thinking about.
Todd, I want to thank you very much for coming on. This has been terrific.
Sure. Yeah, it's been fun.
You in essence are a small business person. You are 100%. The ultimate small business person in the fact that you are chief cook, bottle washer, author, speaker, coach, and it's just you in that office, I'm assuming, and some money to buy some airline tickets with in a car, right?
Yeah. Well, I spent a lot of time at Reagan Airport, so it's my second home.
Thanks for taking time.
Just put a tent up on runway 27, and I'll hang out there. And
Well, I think that's a good spot to stop. So to everyone, thank you for tuning in with us. And as I always love to say, be good, be better, be best.
There you go. Thanks, guys.
Peace.